Hello everyone, welcome. So today I want to talk about some optimization and export functionality that we can use to really make an object that we've modeled in Rhino transferable to other programs. So this lightsaber you will be familiar with from previous demos is comprised of several layers. Each layer is assigned different materials. These are all the materials on here. In the past, we've been using OBJ files for export functionality. Today, we're going to be using FBX file. The reason why we've been using OBJs is because the naming convention in Blender transfers better. But by using our batch export Python script or macro that I've got here in the notes on this video, you will be able to batch export every layer as its own individual object. So let's go ahead and get to it. The way we do this is first we want to make sure our settings are proper in our FBX file. So I'm going to export selected and just select an object, any object. And then I'm going to change the convention here or the file type here to Motion Builder FBX. FBXs are nice because they do have more data attached to them than just the diffuse layer or the color layer of the materials. So it'll have some parameters as well. And I'm just going to call it test or whatever and put it on my desktop. FBX, okay. All right, and then this is all fine. Go to options. And then we're going to go to meshes only, and all of this is fine. And you just want to make sure we don't have export lights or export views selected here, and map Rhino Z to FBXY, and check always use these settings so you don't have to do this again in the future. Then we go ahead and hit OK and save or whatever. You can select whether or not you want more or fewer polygons. I usually leave it right about there. Hit OK. We can clean it up even more in the next software. So next, all we do is I've got this button here, which is basically called macro 3 right now. If I go to, this is just for PC users here, the modification to the toolbar here. If I go to edit button and batch export button here, you can see this is the Python script that we will be using. If you have a Mac, you can just copy and paste this script into your macro editor. So type the command macro and then copy and paste from the video. Okay, so when I click on batch export, it's going to use the settings that I've already got set up on my FBX that we just did, and it's going to put it all in the same folder as my project here. So if I go up to my file location here, and I've got it, lightsaber, and you can see I've already got a bunch of FBX files here. I'm going to just go ahead and get rid of them. So I can do a fresh one. All right, there they all are. Okay. And no FBXs there. Good. All right, so if I click on my button or execute, you can see all of the commands going into there, and it is saving it into the same file. So if I look back in this file now, let me just go back and forth here. You can see all the FBX files from the layers. Okay. So now we just go into our next program, which is Blender. So I close this, sure I'll save it. And we go to Blender, we can delete this, and we want to change our units. By the way, I'm using feet in Rhino, so I'm going to use feet in Blender. So I'm going to switch to Imperial, and by default it will be feet. Okay. So now I can go File, and import FBX, find my FBX files, there they all are, shift and grab them all, and then import. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is we want to make sure our settings are all set up right for our render engine. I'm changing it from Eevee to cycles here. And then because I'm using my graphics processor, I'm going to use GPU compute. If I change the visualizer to ray traced here, you can see that most of the parameters have transferred over pretty nicely. So the red glow, I've even got emissive materials here. My plastics all transferred over nicely. Let's go to the materials browser here and just make sure that we've got all of our objects selected properly here. I'm going to change the base color in the metal to a light tone here so that it works. And then I'm going to go ahead and do metallic all the way up. And do the same thing. Actually, I'm going to link these two since they're the same material. So I'll link these two. So select that one first, this one second. The darker orange color is the one that's going to be linked. And then if we go to object, we can go to link and we can go to materials. Oops, I went the wrong way. So select you, and then you. The lighter orange is the one that we'll link to. Okay, so link and materials. Okay, and that way we just kind of clean things up a little bit more. So if I select all of this as well, and actually I do want, these are a little bit more matte, so I'm gonna leave those, but these ones can all be the same. So I'll go to object, link materials. Okay, and then this one, I'll link these materials. I'm just trying to cut down the number of materials that I've got on my object. And then I'm going to actually go ahead and turn the roughness all the way up on that so it's nice and matte. Okay. And these two also change, but I'm also going to make it more metallic. And roughness, don't want it shiny. These ones, I'm going to bring the roughness all the way down on these materials. Okay, nice and reflective. Can't tell it's as reflective as it is because there's not a lot reflecting right now. Okay, but we see there is some looking good there. All right, cool. So once you get it fixed up exactly the way you want, the next step we're going to do is we're going to bake and make this all one object. You can see that, yes, it's all separate objects right now. Well, you know, that's fine. But I'm going to actually link these all together into one object. Maybe even bump the emission up a little bit here. Give it a real nice glow. Okay. Just making sure everything's all nice and tidy. Now, the next step is we're going to bake this. And what baking does is baking basically creates new UV maps for the object and applies different parameters of the material so it's easier to transfer between software. It's especially good for objects that have multiple materials, also floors and things that are tiled. Having the materials baked onto the architecture makes it a lot easier to ensure that when you bring it into other software, the materials transfer nicely. So what I use to bake is I actually have this application that I've downloaded from Blender's store, and it's called Simple Bake. I'll show you how to get it here. Yeah. So Simple Bake is, you just Google it, Simple Bake for Blender. And yes, it is $16 for a single use, you can actually put it on 3 different computers, I believe. And it's, you know, you'll have to pay for it, but it's so worth it. 16 bucks, a couple lattes or whatever, and you've got access to a great tool that's just going to make things optimized so much nicer and quicker than it would be with other programs. So once you buy it, you simply download it, and it comes in a zip file. And you save that, you keep that zip file, and you go to Edit, Preferences, and you go to Add-ons, and then you go to Install. You find the location of it, which in my case would be in Downloads, and you look for the zip file, Simple Bake, right there. So once you click on it, you install the add-on. Okay. Then it should be right here. You click on the little check box to activate it, and then scroll down, make sure that everything is nicely nice and clean here. So basically, if there's an update or anything like that, it'll say that right there, but there's no update. So we're all good. It's all installed. And Simple Bake is located in our rendering settings right here. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can see Simple Bake is right there. And that's what we're going to use to make this object all one. So what is so great about this? Okay, so if I select this whole thing and I go Control J to join it all together into one object, okay? This is now one object, all right? And where this object is located, what is it titled? Let's go here. Or materials, will tell me to. It's called Bubble Strip 7 now, whatever. I'll find it, Bubble Strip 7. I'm going to change that to just Lightsaber. And oops, there it is. So then none of these even matter anymore. They're all kind of blank. But why not just keep it like this? Why do we have to do any other steps? Because if we go to our UV maps, go to UV editing here, this is our UV map. Chaos. Okay, and it's because there's all of the UV maps for the different objects are on top of each other. So I'm going to do a few things. So let me tab over here real quick, and I'm going to add a modifier here, and I'm going to go ahead and decimate this thing. Right now my face count is 100,925. If I switch this over to planar here, it brings it down to 21,000, and it'll keep it at a 5-degree angle. And it should still look pretty good, I think. So if I want to go ahead and apply it, can't really see much of a difference. You can, if you get really close, you can see that these are no longer rounded, but that saves us a heck of a lot of triangle count. So now if I tab back over, still chaos, but my object has got a lot less geometry to it. Okay, so the next step is to go ahead and bake this thing, just to show you what that does. So if I come over here and I've got it selected, it's kind of fun to watch in the UV editor too, because you can see all of this. You have to think about what parameters you've got on this thing, right? I've got
emission on this part. I've got glossiness or roughness. I've got metalness. I've also got transmissiveness, which is the clarity of like the little bubbles on the top. And then of course diffuse, which is just your color. So, or albedo, I think it's also called, which is another term for just the colors of things. So I want to think about those maps, and those are the maps that I'm going to create. So I go down here. I've got PBR bake selected here. And then I can go to the presets I've already got here. I could just click on that, but I'm not going to because I don't need that. I want to make sure that I show you all the steps. So you can set presets so you don't have to keep coming back to them right here. And then this is the bake object. So you select the object you want to bake and you add it. Lightsaber is there. Okay. PBR bakes. What am I going to bake? Diffuse is just the color. I'm going to do metalness. I'm going to do transmission. I'm going to do emission, roughness, and transmission. So these are all the different maps it's going to make. And if I had normal maps, which I don't, like texture maps, it would also do that too, which is spectacular. And if I had any transparency, like say this was a chain link fence, I can also bake that with the alpha, which I don't need to do. Special bakes, nothing I need to do here. Texture settings. I'm going to go ahead and make this 2K. So you can just hit the plus there, and that makes it a 2K material. Don't enter the numbers manually. Keep them square. 2048 by 2048 is a power of 2. We want to use that. And if I was using transparency, I'd have to check use alpha. Export settings. And then I will need to save this, right? So save as. All right. And I'll just date it here. Okay, so now it's saved. I'm going to export my bake, and I'm going to export my mesh. And where am I going to put it? You want to make sure you've got a good place for it. Simple bakes, good folder there. Accept that. That's where I'm going to put it. PNG file is fine. Export as file name, lightsaber, and then I'm going to go. Okay, UV settings, super crucial here. You saw our chaotic UVs. Now we'll go to new UV map. And I'm going to set a margin here of 0.001. You got to kind of hope that you want to create enough space between the parts of the UV map so that you don't get color bleed or light bleed. But you don't want them to be too far apart. You want to utilize your map as good as possible. Move new UVs to the top. Okay, that's all good. All right, other settings. And then make sure GPU's compute is here for me. You can do background if you're working on multiple objects, but I'm going to just do foreground. And it's going to go ahead and bake all of these things. So here we go. And I'm going to just do it real time here, show how long it takes on my machine, and you'll see the process. All right, so that's it. So now this is all baked out. So I can actually just close this. I'll save it. And then let's open up a new file and just use our newer bake. So go ahead and delete that. units, metric, imperial, rendering, settings, back to cycles, GPU compute. Okay, file, import, FBX, and we go to lightsaber, simple bake, lightsaber FBX, import. And then look at it here. Looks exactly like it did before. However, when we look at materials now, you'll see it's all right there, lightsaber baked. So that is all there is to it. If we also look over at shading here, you'll see how it's all plugged in together. Our tree here is beautifully done. And we have roughness maps, we have normal map. Well, no, that normal map's not even mapped to anything. We've got metalness, emission, we've got all of our different parameters set up beautifully. So let's go back over to modeling. All right. And for something like this, if I wanted to show it off, I could do a couple more steps just to kind of show you all lighting one more time. Why not, huh? Okay, so maybe I'll just do a quick Shift A, add a plane, G to grab it, and then X or Y, sorry, move it around, S, scale it out. And let's look at it from the right. Make sure that it's touching. G, Z. Okay. And then I'll change the material here, new material, maybe make it black, make it super reflective. Okay. Shift A, let's bring in a cube, scale it way up. Tab over, edit mode, grab ourselves a face, delete the face, delete faces, X to delete, grab the face, tab over here, and then I'm going to do Control-3 to make it kind of roundy, and then I'm going to scale it a little bit more. And I'm going to go ahead and make it just black, I think. Let's do a new material. And black. Okay. Roughness. I'm going to, I'll give it a little bit of sheen so that it can bounce some light. Let's find our light. There you are. G. Go over to the top view here. X, G, Y. Let's go to the side here. G, Z. Let's go to this side. Oops. Oops. There we go. And I'm going to change the light to maybe 100 watt because it's a small area we're lighting up, right? So what would I use at home? Maybe 120 watt. I'm going to do an area light instead. And I'm going to change my rectangle to maybe 2 feet by 2 feet. And let's go to the side here. Put it in wireframe up here. And turn it towards our object. R for rotate, Z. R, Z. R, Z. I do not like this light, how it's acting. Sometimes it's easier just to recreate the light so it's nice and straight. Okay. All right, and then we got to grab our camera and let's go to our camera view and then click out the settings here, view, camera to view, so I can make sure that I'm
working with my parameters here. Okay. All right, let's look at it ray traced here. Okay, this thing I'm gonna shade smooth. Okay. Just right clicked on it and did shade smooth. All right, so let's click on our camera outline here. There we go. And I'm gonna do focal length. Maybe I'll make it a little bit more dramatic. 26 millimeters there. Give it some, a little bit of a wide angle view. Okay. And then I'm going to do depth of field here. And click on the little eyedropper. And give me some eyedropper right on this. And f-stop, I'm going to crank that up a little bit because I do want to get more of it in focus. So I might go ahead and well, let's do this again. Right in the middle. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay. So we're almost ready to render. This is looking pretty good. A few things we can do here. First of all, let's go ahead and change our view here, cameras and frame camera to bounds. That way we're blown up here. We can get a real nice view. Looks good. And I think I'm going to add some mist to this. I think it'll add something to the glow here. So let's go ahead and do that. So particle physics inside of Blender is really cool, but it does cost a lot when it comes to render time. So keep that in mind. You might use this sparingly. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go Shift A, or whoops, A, add a box or cube. Oh, look, nice. It surrounds my object already. If not, you got to move it around. But that's pretty much what I want. But I'm going to scale it through the Z axis, so S and then Z, and go about that size. Let me see what it looks like in my plane there. Okay, cool. And it's blocking all the light right now, of course, so you can't see anything. But we're going to go ahead and change some things. So let's go to our materials here, and this object right now under materials, let's do a new one, and we're going to go ahead and take this surface doohickey and remove it. So that's gone. And then we're going to go to volume here, and we're going to go to principled volume. Awesome. There it is. Okay. And that's basically all there is to it. So let's go back to our view here and see. Very foggy, right? What we can do is we can change the density a little bit. So let's move our density down to where we want it to be. Maybe like right around there. And then the anisotropy, I believe is the word. You can kind of increase it or decrease it. Cool. So that gives us a little bit of like a foggy kind of feel to it. So this is going to add a lot to your rendering time. It might even kind of double it. So keep that in mind. All right, let me go ahead and I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here just to try to fill in the picture plane. Okay, cool. So I think I'm ready to render. Go ahead and go to my render properties, always making sure we've got cycles, we've got GPU compute, max samples in the viewport, don't care right now, 4096. This all depends on your machine. I can do this, no problem, 4096 is fine. Resolution, I can bump that up to 2048 by 1080. That seems reasonable. And let's go ahead and I'm going to hit F12 and it'll start the rendering process. Click over here, F12. And I'll be back when it's done to show you what it looks like. All right, and 22 seconds later, here we are. So that's a little bit about baking and just a refresher on rendering and adding a little particle system to your mix there. So hopefully that helps and will allow you a little further optimization in your objects.